everyone.
Hi, Leslie.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm literally running from one Zoom meeting to another.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone here is familiar with that experience.
Yes, all too familiar.
So let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. And we will do a roll call vote. Director Matthews, City Rep Peter.
Here.
Good to see you. Director Hogan.
Here.
Director Smith.
Present.
Director Madrone. Is Director Madrone here yet?
Present. Yep, present.
Oh, hello there. And Director Wilson.
Here.
Wonderful. Okay, we will just keep moving and go ahead to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar considered to be routine by the HWMA board and will be enacted upon by one motion unless a specific request for review is made by a board member or member of the public. The consent calendar will not be read. I really need to move that period there. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless pulled for discussion. Would anyone like to pull any item from the consent calendar? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
And I can second that motion.
Okay,
That was a motion made by Matthews and seconded by Hogan.
Correct.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, motion passes unanimously. And we will move on to oral and written communications. This time is provided for people to address the board or to submit written communications concerning matters not on this agenda. Board members may respond to statements, but any request that requires board action will be referred to staff for review. Reasonable time limits may be imposed on both the total amount of time allocated for this item and on the time permitted to each individual speaker. Such time allotment or portion thereof shall not be transferred to other speakers. Are there any members of the public who wish to make comment at this time? Looking for hands. No one has their hand raised. Have we received any written communication, Director Fuller?
I have not, no.
Okay, then we will go ahead and close the oral and written communications period and move on to item number 4, approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 draft budget and resolution 2023-01. And I will turn the floor over to you, Director Fuller.
Okay, as everyone is in, I assume, receipt of my email, the bottom line here is that we vetted these costs. And in order to present a balanced budget, I'm proposing a 5% across the board fee increase for our franchise and self-haul fees in order to balance the budget at 0. If we do not do that, we're looking at dipping into our reserves, and I did not want to do that at this time. My main drive for this is twofold. One, costs have increased significantly in the past 5 years, and HWMA has not raised its fees in that time. The main drivers recently, as everyone knows, are the fuel prices, which have been a result of what's happened in Ukraine, and everyone's unfortunately very familiar with that. And the transportation disposal costs, other than fuel, were required to adjust per the CPI, which itself is the most recent is 8.5% a month on month, which is ludicrous compared to prior years. It's more like 2%. So in order to keep pace with those fees, that's one of the drivers. The other thing is we're paying our people to start a wage of $15 an hour. They can go in and out and make $18 an hour and get free cheeseburgers. They can go to the casino and get $500 to sign on and make a $17 an hour wage. I'm proposing a 5% across the board increase for the staff in order to remain at least competitive, to attract and maintain competitive staff. Those are the two main drivers, and anything on the budget is in the packet. I will open it to questions or comments at this time, and Tracy and I will speak to that. So if you'd like to see the screen share, I can do that. I don't know if you all have the packet, but whatever the board's pleasure, we're here to entertain any and all questions and comments.
Does anyone have any questions for Director Fuller?
The 5% wage increase and the increase to the franchise fees, that's factored into the budget as we see it.
Absolutely. That's what, yes, in order to make it balance, thank you. In order to make it balance to zero, yes, that is factored in. This budget says we want 5% fee increase. We're proposing that, and that makes it balance to zero, keeps our reserve, pays for our capital funds, and also make sure that we have I'm sorry, I already said that. All reserves are intact. I'm sorry, I'm tired. Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great. And I see that we do, I think, have a member of the public who might want to make comment, but let's just see if any other board members had questions prior to that. Director Hogan.
Yeah, I did have a couple of questions. I was curious about our long-term debt, the 800,000. I know that was retired, and I'm just kind of curious how that got absorbed into the budget or what happened to that financial obligation now that it's gone.
Tracy, can you speak to that, please?
It's just not on the budget now because it's gone. Part of our capital improvement plan, though, is to possibly start new leases, which for excavator and loader, which probably would have to be financed. So we might, that might be some debt that we will incur. But the $880,000 was paid off in October, and that's reflected as an other adjustment on the income statement that I provided under the consent calendar. Shows that that payment went out and that we are paid off. So it's not included in this next year's budget whatsoever.
And Director Hogan, let me also thank you, Tracy. Let me also add that whereas no, we don't owe $800,000 anymore because my predecessor very shrewdly paid it off. We also have delayed capital projects for the last 2 years, and there's some serious capital projects we need to spend money on this year. So whatever we gain in $800,000 that we're not going to owe anymore on the long term, as Tracy said, we may need to finance new capital projects or pay for them out of pocket. And I allocated monies for that for this coming year.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I just have another question. Speaking of the capital projects that we have here. So we fund every year the capital reserve at 900,000, I think. Is that correct? And then we're proposing to spend almost the full 900K this fiscal year, right? So I guess I have a couple of questions. Like, it's annual that we have the 900,000, and do we just keep adding to it every year? Or like, I guess I just want to make sure we're not going to be left at zero, or will this just come about next fiscal year and we'll refund the capital reserve? Does that make sense?
Thank you. The $900,000 is just to cover projects from 21 and 22, projects that didn't get done in 21 and projects that we have going forward for 22 to ensure that we're doing the projects that we need to do. The 900,000 just covers those projects. It is not the full funded amount for the entire capital reserve. And I don't have that number in front of me, but it's per the capital plan that was improved 3 or 4 years ago. Right now, we're anticipating doing the capital projects and then looking at it probably mid-year and saying, okay, where do we need to go to adjust this to ensure we're still funding those reserves? So it's a combination of both things. We don't have it fully funded, but we have this year's amount allocated per this budget so we can undertake some much needed capital projects.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions. So what wages are your employees making now that we want to raise? We want to raise them to $15 an hour?
No, they're making 15. It would be, I think that the raise would be 1601. Tracy, do you have that in front of you? Because I can find it, but do you have our current wages in front of you? And I can find
I actually don't, because I'm not at the office, but I believe right now they start at like just over 15. And then, they have to wait a year to move up the salary schedule. And that's for all the material diversion technicians, which is our mother load of the employees that work for us. And like you said, they can go to KFC or In-N-Out and start at a much higher rate. Yeah, so I think I want to say maybe 1581 might be where they start, but I'm not positive.
Hold on, I can find that just a minute if you'll indulge me here. I'm searching.
I'm all for raising the wages. I know how tough it is. Are there a lot of positions open right now? Are you anticipating like how many jobs do we have to fill?
Our current staff still has frozen positions approved for last year, and we have not filled those. And we have had a couple people sort of roll through and not really stay. But Eric, I don't think we have any open positions per se, at least not right now, but I know that we're always looking for good people. Step one, 15.25 an hour last year. We're proposing 16.01.
I think that's fantastic. I'm just wondering, in the budget, are you budgeting for a fully staffed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we want to fill the positions that were frozen, fully staff them, and we also accounted for, I'm a firm believer in performance reviews being tied to wages. Otherwise, what's the point of a good performance review if you can't have it reflected in your wage? So not only the 5%, but then let's say somebody performs well and the director reviews him or her and says, hey, you're worthy of a raise. We've allocated monies in this budget for a one-step pay increase for a person that deserves it across the board, whatever the position is, wherever they are now. If they step to the higher grade, that is taken care of in this budget.
And I would like to make a correction there. I did not budget for the frozen positions because that would take board action to unfreeze them as far as far as my understanding.
I'm sorry, Tracy, you're right. You're right. We budgeted for staff as is now with the step increase, merit-based, and 5% across the board to attract more people.
Okay, so will that have to be a future conversation that we have and adjust the budget if we?
Yes, if we go along, and I mean, we don't know how things are going to go in the world. Of course, no one knows that, and budgets are tenuous at best. But given if the need arises, absolutely, if mid-year or before, if necessary, hey, we got some people knocking at our door. We're going to need more wages to compensate for that. If we haven't found the money any other place, yes, of course, we'll have that conversation. And I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry. Also, I'd like to point out that that the board has asked for a rate stabilization reserve as well as a payroll stabilization reserve, and those were kind of just floating in our checking account. And this in March, I actually moved money into our savings to represent that $550,000 that is literally set aside. So that's also something that we could use if we had to.
Yes.
Wonderful. I mean, I know that you've got a lot of things coming up that are going to require a lot of labor. So
I'll go on record and say this. I'm of the opinion that everyone who comes out of high school, before he or she decides what their career is going to be, needs to spend a day at our transfer station and see what it's all about, getting rid of waste, because we all make it and it doesn't go away for free. And it's challenging work. So there, I've said it. I'm on record now.
See, related to that, Director Fuller, I do have one question.
Yes.
Just related to, I enjoyed reading all of the key accomplishments and objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's related to actually your objectives for 2022-23.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if there could be consideration of an objective that includes advocating and partnering for zero waste efforts throughout the county.
Absolutely. Well stated. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I will open the floor to the public. Director Wise, would you like to make a comment? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and that kind of dovetails nicely after what you just said. I think you can see on your budget on line 81 that there is a line item there that talks about recycling residual expense. And you see that's $272,000 that is budgeted to take, and that's only taking care of a portion of what the recycling processing fee charges. That's for the recycling processing. That's what the HWMA is committed to soften the impact of the garbage or the residual that's in the recycling. That's about it's about 2.3% of your entire budget there. So that could be a significant savings. So I know it's not something that could happen like next year, but this is something that the board could consider building into like a plan where in the next 3 to 5 years, you'll see savings on that line item if we invest in getting some better education in place and some zero waste activities or some recycling communication. I also want to point out that this year that the recycling processing fee is going down by about $11 a ton. It is going down, and that's a reflection of better commodities market last year. It does not contain in it what the impacts of the current fuel situation is yet, because it's based on last year's expenses. It also contains in there, one of the reasons why it's improved is because this is feedback from having the materials that would have formerly gone into buyback in the blue can. We give that back to the customer so you can all feel confident in saying that, yeah, your recycling processing fee went down this year because the way that our contract is set up for the recycling processing is that it reflects revenues that are brought in through Recology's getting that CRV buyback or the CRV refund redemption value and applying it toward the fee to recycle at the blue can for everything. So that's part of the reason why it's gone down. Next year, we're going to get the feedback, hopefully, not too badly. We're going to feel the pressure from the fuel increase. Mm-hmm. So we've gone, I had in my budget, like $4.20 a gallon. It's like $7 a gallon, and that's being reflected in all of our transportation costs.
It's insane.
It's going to be. So the impact. So if you're going to do something, I guess my final message is, if you're going to do something about addressing the recycling contamination problem, this is the year to do it. And to start working into it, because 5 years from now, we'll be kicking ourselves saying that we didn't use this opportunity to do it. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. But anyway, your rates at the curbside rates for collection at the curbside is going to be somewhat buffered by the fact that we're going to be lowering the recycling processing fee, pass-through fee that's going to be applied to your ratepayers at the curbside. So that's one good thing. So,
Linda, thank you. Let me ask before I forget. When you say feedback, does it members of the public come in and gripe at you or sing your praises, or how do you get that feedback? Do you have a mechanism for getting that information?
No, I meant the financial feedback.
Okay,
is what I meant. How that's going to translate into
right.
What a processing fee is going to be like next year.
Okay.
Right now, we're not going to for this fee cycle. The way that our fee is, how we determine our fees, is through the calendar year of 2021.
Okay.
And so it did not. That was prior to the fuel prices going up. Right. Thankfully, aluminum is paying $1.25 a pound right now, but that's at the expense of what's happening in Ukraine, unfortunately. And that's I'd rather pay 32 cents and not have that happen. But that's going to change here, and I'm hoping that we can take advantage of the timing of this and really look toward supporting more communication with the users of the blue cans.
Okay, good.
I have one more question. So how long did you say it's been since we've raised rates?
At least 5 years, 5.5 years.
All right, so is 5% going to be enough for you, for your?
I- Good question, and I appreciate it. As far as I'm concerned, we vetted these as best we could, and right now I'm confident 5% to accommodate the expenses and the wage increase should be sufficient for this fiscal. Yes, if it blows out of the water, everyone's going to know about it as soon as possible at or before the mid-year review. But yes, if it weren't, I would have told you we need 7.5 or 10. And that's what you'll get from me if it comes to that. And I'm confident with the numbers, you'll hear from me. So yes.
And I guess I do have another question. Well, first, are there any other members of the public who wish to speak on this item? Okay. Thank you, Director Wise, for being here. We will bring it back to the board. Somewhat related to Director Matthews' question, I know we will, we have SB 1383 on the agenda, but should we be sort of looking toward and thinking about kind of potentially future large budget items, that we need to prepare for in terms of this year's budget?
You mean as regards Senate Bill 1318 and potential organic food and so forth, for example? To that point, thank you, Madam Chair. To that point, and so that everyone knows now, because of what was going on with the budget and vetting the fees, ensuring we had those correct, and the CRV report, which Director Keller will be giving here in a moment, we do not have the cost numbers for the or what if we do organic food waste yet. We will have those at the May meeting. Evan Edgar is online and he can speak to any general questions regarding Senate Bill 1383. But to answer your question, I don't think we have enough data yet to be able to make that statement. So I don't know. And should that change again, everyone will know. I mean, the world has gone crazy, and you will hear from me and my staff should we feel the need to make changes as soon as we feel that they're necessary. But I don't know. Right now, I don't know. But it's a valid question, and we're certainly thinking about that.
For sure. Thank you.
Yes.
I will say that right now we have contracts that we're working through with Edgar and Associates, and so it's some consulting fees. And I did raise, it's kind of being split right now between the transfer station and admin. And so I did factor in what is known according to his schedule. I did factor in those costs for the budget for next year.
Thank you. Director Wilson, I see you unmuted. Did you want to add something?
Just the only thing, I think you may partially answered it in the by Director Fuller, but on the 1383, the question about whether or not we should about finding another place to do this rather than do it at I think we were going to do the 1383 and move the recycling to somewhere else. Has that cost been established?
We don't know that. That may be one of the options. We don't know. We were going to have both those presentations at this meeting, but it became too cumbersome. So Eric and I are working up the food portion of that, the organics 1383 portion that will be presented in May, and we'll have a much better idea about whether that's cost effective at that time.
All right, that's kind of what I thought you meant.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you. And just there's the wrinkle in here, of course, is that I don't know how many of you are aware, but Hambro has since started its CRV center in Arcata, and our report will Eric has run numbers that he's going to speak to about if we did it here. What that does regarding Hambro, I don't know yet because I don't know Hambro's operation, but it's that has occurred since we last met. So there is a CRV center that people can use. It's just not here. If it becomes here, well, we'll figure that out. I didn't know if anyone was aware of that.
I was aware of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe this could probably wait until that agenda item, but from what the city manager of Arcata told me, they want to be the sole
Well, I think that was always the case. And, I mean, they want to be the sole, and yet we have citizenry that, to my understanding, has droves and droves of saved up cans and bottles they want to get rid of. So what's the better way to serve the public, right? I mean, you can see both sides of it. So I don't know, but it is interesting that it happened since we last met.
Yeah.
Let's save any continuation of this discussion for the next agenda item, if that's okay with the.
Sure.
I was going to go ahead and make a motion right now to approve the fiscal year 2022-23 draft budget and resolution 2023-01.
Excuse me, I believe it needs to have a 30-day waiting period. It goes out to the member agencies per the joint powers agreement.
Oh, okay.
Yes, it does, which means we come back in May and, okay. Thank you, Nancy.
And yeah, so there's a process in which
Okay.
you are to formally notice the other member agencies. We can talk about that after the meeting.
Okay, Nancy, thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. So no, I don't need to make a motion. We can just move on if we're done.
Yeah, unless the board has any, directions or want to see any changes to the draft budget as proposed. There you go.
I'm happy with the way it is.
So, Attorney Diamond, we don't need to kind of make a recommendation that it moves forward to the member agencies or anything like that. We just sort of hear it, and then since there are no changes, it moves forward, and then we see it again in May.
Right, but I think it would be really helpful for Peter and Tracy to have the board indicate whether they are accept this for being forwarded, or whether they have concerns with it. It's been a good discussion. I don't think there's any hesitation, but it would be useful, I think, to have either by consensus or by motion.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
Nancy.
Thanks, Nancy. So now I'm unsure what I need to make a motion to.
How about a motion to receive without change, forward to the member agencies, and bring back a final budget for adoption next board meeting next month?
Perfect.
That.
Yeah, what she said.
Great. And that will still include the minor shift in Director Fuller's objective, since it's not
Yes,
actually part of the budget.
absolutely.
Okay. I really, Director Matthews made a motion. Thank you, Director Matthews, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diamond.
Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second that motion.
Thanks, Director Hogan. Almost, Director Smith. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Motion passes unanimously. And we will move on to item number 5, standing item CRV and recycling update.
Eric, floor is yours.
Good evening, board, and Chairwoman Castellano. That went a little bit quicker than I expected, so I was going to keep this a little bit briefer, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. So just for background, the Eureka Recycling Center used to operate as a certified CRV redemption center. During that time, we were open 7 days a week to the public, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Our staffing levels were 13 staff members. 8 staff members were present Monday through Friday, with an additional 5 staff members present Saturday and Sunday on the weekends to cover all the activities related to not only CRV buyback, but the drop-off materials that we accept at the transfer station. So in this staff report, option 1 is opening the Eureka Recycling Center back for CRV services only. So the current facility footprint, in staff's opinion, does not possess the necessary capacity to accept the current amount of drop-off material combined with our projected CRV intake. Doing this, I used historical data when there was multiple CRV centers. So I did not use data when the Eureka Recycling Center was the sole CRV center. I used it as it was one of the 3 in county. Obviously, because Hambro has opened recently, it's more efficient to use that type of data. We have had an enormous difficulty in shipping material. Shipping material now has become one of the most difficult things I do on a daily basis. Our footprint has not expanded since 2000 when the authority took over the solid waste HWMA operations. And then in 2010, when HWMA took over the Arcata Community Recycling Center and the Eureka Recycling Center. Our footprint has remained the same, and we've done nothing but continue to add additional programs, diversion activities, reuse strategies, all that type of stuff, different types of processing materials. We continue to collect currently at the recycling center, scrap metal, aluminum, plastic, cardboard, appliances, e-waste, CRTs. We have a shortage of storage space currently. Adding what we project to intake if we were to open CRV, staff believes that it's non-viable. We would not be able to safely operate or keep that type of material and that activity undercover, which is required with the water board. So option 1, that represents opening the Eureka Recycling Center for CRV only. Staff projects a 6 to 8 month phase timeline. This would actually be fairly simple. We would want to give notice to the public that the Eureka Recycling Center is going to be closed for a couple of months. So a 2 to 3 month notice that we would close. Once closed, that would give us a timeline to be able to get rid of the backlog of material or the current material that we have stored there. That would allow us to do facility retrofits and any type of maintenance upgrades to equipment or facility management that would be needed to facilitate CRV again. We would also be able to post hiring for staff, additional staff that may be needed. And then our projected timeline is that we could reopen the Eureka Recycling Center for CRV buyback activities in October of 2022. The estimated costs. So in the staff report, you can take a look at the estimated cost, but it is not included in the fiscal year 2022-23 budget, the items that are below. Yeah. So these are additional items to the HWMA recycling program base fee. So you'll see that the total increase to the HWMA base fee would be $6.15, bringing the total recycling program base fee to $15.17. So you'll notice that we will need additional staffing because we plan to roll out CRV as an appointment only. We have, in the past, I'm sure the board knows that we had a considerable issue with wait times and staffing and lines. We want to mitigate that as much as possible. So we would introduce appointment onlys. We would hire additional staff to deal with the extra customers, help customers sort their materials, answer phone calls, take appointments, stuff like that. We have most of the infrastructure needed. Currently, we've retained it since the last time we were open in 2018. But we would need to update our signage. We would need to get new bins for the storage of aluminum and plastics. The main addition is going to be glass storage and processing. So because HWMA in the past was not a processor, and there is no longer a CRV processor in Humboldt County, I would have to have a conversation with Hambro on if they are considered a processor and if we could partner with them. But this staff report was written to assume that HWMA would need to become its own processor. Glass is going to be the big issue with that. as some of the board members may know, we are not allowed to have industrial activity outside of cover because of the state water board and then some of the water board issues we've had in the past. So that type of activity would need to happen inside the footprint of the Eureka Recycling Center, which is already going to be pressed for space with this proposal. I do not have projected costs because that's something that we've never done. We don't know what that would look like, and I would advise staff's recommendation would be to use undesignated reserves to cover those minimal costs. Option two, the timeline on it's a little bit longer, but it's obviously HWMA would develop and operate a CRV buyback facility in a different location, in a designated location, most likely in the greater Humboldt Bay area. Staff's timeline is projected this to be 8 to 12 months, with the biggest barrier to entry would be site location and purchase of a site to put this facility on. We would need additional staffing if we were to maintain the Eureka Recycling Center how it is, as drop-off material only. So we would need to fully staff a new CRV center. The other addition that we would need is we would need a rail truck. If the site could not be permitted for processing and a baler, or if it did not have the size to store bales, load material onto freight trailers and send them to brokerages, we would need to transfer the collected material from that site to the Eureka Recycling Center, and the Eureka Recycling Center's current footprint would be the processor for this activity. Those are the two big barriers to entry. The rail truck, as you'll note, is about a $256,000 cost. The site location, staff has been working to locate several sites that could be plausible. We have located about 3 or 4, 3 of them in the greater Humboldt area and 1 in the McKinleyville area that we feel would be a good fit, as long as we could work with the planning and zoning of whatever jurisdiction it lies within to get the correct zoning needed. The cost is projected to be about $1 million to $2 million per site. So that's the general range that we're looking for a big enough footprint to house a CRV center that would be zoned or have the ability to be zoned appropriately as light industrial. There are not a lot of sites as you would imagine. So there's very limited opportunities for purchase of sites necessary to facilitate that type of material just processing. So this is not shown as an impact to the HWMA base fees. Staff's recommendation on this would again to be either use undesignated reserves or to have staff seek alternative financing for that. That way, that is not, it would be a large one-time impact to the ratepayers and the rate for that fiscal year. So it would, staff believes it would be more prudent to either find additional funding somewhere else or use undesignated reserves. And I am happy to answer any questions about either option 1 or option 2. Obviously, there are alternatives at the board's discretion.
Thanks, Eric. I think my biggest question is in terms of other options, especially with Hambro coming on the scene, would there be sort of a third option of do nothing? Sorry to be so blunt.
Yeah, I think obviously that's not listed, but that's always an option under board discretion. This isn't, this doesn't have to move forward, but it is information that the last time we met, the board requested, and obviously things have changed in Humboldt County since then.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with Leslie. Like, I think that maybe it would be a good idea. I like these options, or I like option 1, but I think it might be, I would hate to lose, our non CRV recycling center. I think that maybe just to wait a little while and see how Hambro is kind of handling it and then kind of go from there.
And a related kind of question for option one, this would also mean that, would problematize the idea of using that space for composting if we did go forward with that option.
Yes.
That is correct. The other thing to think about in option one is that materials that are already difficult for residents to get rid of, such as freon appliances, CRTs, e-waste, we would no longer be able to take it at that location. That would become more problematic for people to get rid of those items. There's only a few locations that can get rid of them now, and you would be getting rid of the one that serves the most of the greater Humboldt Bay area.
Madam Chair, may I speak? You said yes.
Yes, go right ahead.
I think right now would be, as was already mentioned, that this would be it's not a good time to go into this. We should wait and watch. But I also feel that Hambro needs the material that's here. There's going to be a glut of material right now that everybody's stacked up.
Yes.
But that's going to go away. There's going to be a point where that's going to hopefully catch up. With all of the problems that have been discussed, particularly glass, we would have to be a glass processor. There's not a hauler. The initial cost of this thing exceeds $1 million. Additional staff. I think at this time, and probably well into the future, it would be unwise to go into the CRB business. We have plenty of other things to stay busy with. And as mentioned, also to have a place for people to recycle the other stuff that needs to be recycled needs to be here. If it means driving 10 miles to Arcata rather than having one close at hand, that's a lot better than jumping in here and pushing those people out, and then you're turned back going to Crescent City or somewhere else. So that's my 2 cents.
No, I wonder if Hambro will be doing so well that maybe they'll just take it upon themselves to open up a second recycling center, and then we won't have to worry about it at all.
I would like to hear from Hambro. I think that's already been said. So I think maybe that's a good idea.
Yeah, I would like to request that, Hambro came before the board when they were considering this.
Yes.
And I to request that they come back before the board next month even to give us an update, especially now that they're open. I think, since we did enter into this arrangement, in some ways with them in mind, it would be proper for them to come back and inform us of where things are at.
Okay. Well, let's invite them to next month then. Let's do it.
Yeah, I mean, it would also be interesting to hear. It's too bad that we don't get a lot of public comment on issues like these, because I would really be interested in what the public has to say about this. But yeah, I'm in favor of the idea of inviting Hambro to our next meeting and kind of putting us doing anything on pause. It would be terrible to lose e-waste and other kind of drop off.
And to Director Matthews' point, are there any members, though this is a more of a standing item and an update, are there any members of the public who would like to make comment on this item? Director Wise.
You're muted, Linda.
Linda, you're muted.
You're muted.
Okay, I'll make a comment. This is Linda Wise, a member of the public talking. And somebody that's got some, that's dangerous, because I know a little bit more than the average person about this. I have to say that, that what the HWMA has been doing to try to figure out an issue, the issues around CRB buyback has been stellar, and it's been wonderful that Hambro's has gotten the chance to do what they need to do. And I think I just want to say that one of the things, because of what I encounter in the waste streams, losing the ability to get rid of white goods and some of the electronics would be devastating to this community, and it would cause, environmental damage, in my opinion, to not have the ability to do it at the Waste Authority. And the other thing to think about in the future is with 1383 passage, there's going to be a lot of mandates about people going, where people are going to have curbside recycling. So in the next 3 to 5 years, there may not be enough money to support that, that many facilities. So I just want to say that I'm glad that you're looking at this in that way, and maybe the timing of it coming in with 1383 considerations is good, considering what the limited space that HWMA has. So I'm glad that all of that's being thought about.
Yeah, that was exactly the kind of public comment I was looking for. Thank you so much.
Yes, Linda's our public. Linda is the public tonight. So thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
So this is just an update, right? There's no motion that needs to come out of this, or?
I do think it'd be nice to have board consensus, since staff did provide us with 2 really detailed options, whether we want to choose one of those or not, or choose to wait at this time. I don't think it has to be a formal motion, but is there board consensus to not choose option 1 or 2 and to continue to wait and assess the CRV environment?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to maybe make it a standing item on the agenda, just, so we're still talking about it. But as of now, I don't think that I want to move forward. I think it's a wait and see situation for me.
Is everyone else on the board in agreement with that in terms of consensus?
I'm in agreement.
Thank you, Director Wilson. Okay, I see nods. Okay, does anyone wish to state a different opinion or perspective? Okay, thank you, everyone. Really great discussion and insight, and thank you, Eric and Peter, for your thorough report on that. It is really helpful, even though we didn't choose your options, to see kind of what the options would look like. It definitely helps with the decision making. We will move on to standing item number 6, the SB 1383 update. And with that, I see we have Evan Edgars here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Directors. I'm Evan Edgar from Edgar Associates. We had a good meeting back on March 3rd. We submitted the draft compliance roadmap as a working document to all the staff members of all the different cities that work with SB 1383. We had a 6-week period of comment period, which that Eric's compiling, and then on the noticed local task force meeting on April 25th, I'm going to finalize, take the comments in and then discuss it further with the local task force on April 25th. There's been some comments back already that it's 71 pages full of good information and options with regards to backyard composting and community composting, and a lot of options and ideas. So it is a roadmap, and to take care of 1383, and it did cover the administrative functions of all the grants, SB 619, whereby we have until January 1st, 2023, when CowerCycle will allow, at that point, waive any fines or penalties up until that date. But after January 1st, 2023, there's some expectations that some programs should be beginning.
Do you know what time that local task force meeting is at on the 25th?
Is it at 11 or 3? It used to be at 3 o'clock or 11 a.m. I'm not sure. Robin said it recently, but
I don't remember.
It's at 11.
11?
Oh, there's Robin. Hi, Robin.
Hi.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions or comments on this item? Director Hogan.
So once the roadmap's finalized, can we expect then at the next meeting to review more of the final version or review a final version? Or what are the next steps that we can expect?
I'll take it, Evan. That is correct. So we'll go to the LTF. The LTF will review and finalize that. And then at the next HWMA scheduled board meeting after that LTF meeting, we'd be more than happy to present that item to our board and get your feedback for any additional edits, changes, direction, or just informational.
Is there going to be any, I feel like this is one of those things that the public knows like a little bit about, but doesn't completely understand. And I do feel like there are a lot of opportunities for education around this.
Yes.
Are there any public forums or education opportunities that are planned, or could that be brought to the local task force, or kind of what are some thoughts around that?
I don't know. It's an item on our council meeting next week, and we'll have a pretty thorough presentation by Emily. And so I don't know if other councils are, this is going to be our second update, so I don't know if other councils are, spending as much time discussing it as we are.
I'm sorry. So HWMA has worked with most of our member agency staffs and other participating jurisdiction staff. There are talks with City of Eureka, City of Arcata about doing outreach and education and Zoom meetings for local businesses, local stakeholders, anyone else interested. So HWMA staff, along with Edgar and Associates, is working with your member agency staff to nail down that education and outreach component. But it is a difficult thing to do when we don't really have a concrete direction on how SB 1383 and its activities are going to be implemented in Humboldt County. So we've kind of been holding off on releasing any more information until we get the roadmap finalized and we get a little bit more finality on how we're going to deal with creating the infrastructure and dealing with the collection and processing of that material.
Yeah, but we have till January. I feel like it's kind of getting to be kind of important to start talking about it soon.
Right.
What CalRecycle put out, and it's part of the draft roadmap, there's a policy called substantial effort, and that along as it's on the jurisdictions themselves, not on the authority, but on behalf of the jurisdictions, they have to show a substantial effort in order to implement programs with regards to edible food recovery. We'll have that next month because we're still working on that. That's a big component. But as long as it shows some substantial effort in making progress, then there's a process there that CalRecycle takes into consideration where it would not have. So that's another kind of opportunity to keep on making a substantial effort, and we'll document that, and we can make a case to CalRecycle should it go past January 1st, 2023.
I wanted to add in too on the Eureka end for Leslie. We have been really concerned about how to get information to the public. We've been talking about it a lot, especially with Peter and Eric. We had a meeting about it. And I think that Eric had a good answer that with the compliance roadmap still being developed, we really want to have some ducks in a row when we start messaging. So that's a big one over this next month. But we have spoken with the Eureka Chamber of Commerce, and we are scheduled for a presentation to businesses in May, though that date is a little bit in flux due to the very unfortunate passing of Donna. So we are trying to get hooked up with the business community, and then we have requested from Edgar's sub, Abound, to talk about a technical workshop for the Tier 1 food rescue folks who will need to be donating food come January. So we're working hard, Leslie, and I'm hoping in the next month or so we'll have a little bit clearer of a picture of what public outreach and education will look like. So thank you.
Yeah, so is the onus of any of this outreach going to be on like Recology as the ones that are actually going to be doing the pickup?
And on behalf of 1383, the onus is on the jurisdictions, and the jurisdictions are ultimately responsible for collection. And it would coordinate with Recology and Humboldt Sanitation to have a common message throughout the community, to have a common program under the guidance of the authority here. So ultimately, it is on the jurisdictions, and typically the hauler does the messaging on what you can put in as organic, what is acceptable, and a lot has to do on what location is will be taking the organics to do the composting, and most likely be more of a narrow list of goods versus a wide list. We learned a lot from recycling on wishful recycling, when everybody put whatever they wanted in the blue cart, and we got 40% contamination. But composters want to see is a narrow list so we can keep our organic certification. So working with Recology and the cities, we would want to have a more narrow list of what is truly compostable, and not stepping into the greenwashing of some of these packaging industry that has chasing arrows that don't compost. So it will be a chore to have the right education when you roll out the program, and when whatever compost facility will be accepting the organics, whatever they accept, and it will be more of a narrow list rather than an exhaustive list.
So to, I guess, tie this back to the budget discussion, is there stuff in the budget called out for any kind of educational materials or anything that we might be sending out?
Specifically around SB 1383? No, not specifically, but certainly can be considered. I think, and I'm going to restate the obvious, I think everyone present knows this, the more we communicate, the more consistently we communicate and accurately. There's a lot of anxiety and stress about what's going on with Senate Bill 1383, and I'm sure many of you have had many calls, as have I. We're working together to mitigate that. I've been leaning very heavily on it, and Evan and Eric, who are both very much more savvy than I am, working as hard as I can to come to speed, but I want to be part of whatever educational effort, in fact, helps move that forward. So, yeah, if we need to reallocate funds, that's going to be part of reporting to the board about, hey, we need to consider this to make sure this effort is covered. So I appreciate it.
Because I haven't been getting really any calls or emails, which worries me, because that means there's not really
No. I know. I share your concern. So.
Let's open this up to the public. Director Wise, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, with the question with the collection company being part of that. Usually how that is worked out, and I'm sure Edgar and Associates will confirm this, is that usually that responsibility is detailed in our collection agreements. So as part of 1383, we'll be looking at changing the collection agreements, the franchise agreements, to be able to conform to that. And that's the opportunity to add messaging in there. There is a cost for that. So that's usually where the funding for that kind of messaging occurs is through the rates. And so it can either come as a pass through something that comes through HWMA that's distributed, or it's something that's done as a coordinated effort through the haulers, and they collect the rates from the customer.
Yeah, I agree with that. Working statewide on this issue is very typical, where the city delegates a lot of education upon the hauler. That's a typical scene. But statewide, I've been keeping track of the rates from the League of Cities and from other cities. What we're seeing statewide is that 1383 impacts to the residential rate have been averaging 18% at collection. And then on the commercial accounts, statewide, we've seen an average about 28% rate increase on the commercial to implement 1383 collection and messaging and outreach education. So those are typical costs that the rest of the cities are experiencing statewide.
Thanks, that's really useful.
Yeah, that is useful.
Okay, this has been, I do appreciate this, that we do have this as a standing item on the agenda, because it is kind of a constantly unfolding process, and we're all learning as well. Is there anything anyone else from the board wants to ask or chime in on this topic? Okay, seeing this, I will close this item and move on to board member reports. Thank you to everyone who's here for the previous items. Does anyone from the board wish to make a report at this time? Okay, I guess I just want to report that, especially since Ms. Donna Wright was brought up earlier, that we lost someone really who made a huge impact on our communities, and just acknowledge that, the appreciation of the impact that one person can make, and that, we're all just kind of feeling that in different ways, And yeah, just a moment to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Leslie. She was a force.
Remarkable human. And with that, I will move on to the executive director's report.
I have nothing to say except sincerest thanks for all the support in my first 4 months here, not only of my staff, but of the board. I don't have anything other than what's been discussed. And again, my 3 priorities are all safety, operational integrity, and transparency. To that end, I invite anyone present on this call, if you see me fluttering in any of those areas, please call me out on it because that's very important to me. Other than that, I don't have anything.
Thanks, Director Fuller. And with that, we have completed all of the tasks set before us on our agenda, and we will adjourn this meeting at 6:32 p.m. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.